The woman charged with killing her 14-year-old son in Sidney last December disagrees with a court-ordered competency evaluation. 40-year-old Megan McDonald appeared at the Kennebec County Courthouse today for a competency hearing. She was indicted by a grand jury in February on murder and aggravated cruelty to animals charges after allegedly killing her son, Quincy McDonald, and 4 family pets. The forensic psychologist who evaluated McDonald testified that McDonald showed symptoms of delusional disorder, meaning she has thoughts that aren't based in reality, which affects her seeing things as they are. Court records say McDonald told police God chose her for a murder-suicide. The doctor says McDonald understands what she did and the legal consequences, but she can't consider her options rationally. McDonald's lawyer told the judge McDonald believes she is competent and disagrees with the doctor's evaluation.
She understands the level of evidence that if prosecuted, the prosecutor would bring against her. What she does not appreciate is the role that mental illness has played in her thinking and her actions and the allegations.
The judge did not issue a ruling today. The state will have 2 weeks to provide the court with a post-hearing brief. The defense has 7 days after that for a response.